My name is Tyrone Shealy I am a board certified school counselor and family therapist. 1 in 5 African Americans has a mental health disorder. 20% more likely to have a mental health condition. Major depression, PTSD, ADHD, and schizophrenia are common mental health disorders for African Americans.
What's up, guys? It's JosiahsWorldTV, and today I really want to talk about a very important topic. A topic that has been kind of really swept under the rug, from generations to generations. I want to talk about the power of Black mental health. And today I have a very special guest with me today. I have Mr. Tyrone Shealy, Black health counselor, and thank you so much for coming on my show today to sit down with cocktails with Josiah and just to talk about the importance of Black mental health.
Shealy.
How are you today?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. So can you just tell me a little bit about everything that you do?
Sure. So right now I work as a school counselor, but my certification is school counselor and family therapist. So a lot of my work has been in individual counseling, family therapy, group counseling. So my background is pretty much just serving the underrepresented population. So I started out right out of graduate school working with the Native American population, and just there is really where my passion began, and just addressing mental health, but more specifically moving to the Houston, Texas areas where I really wanted to kind of address Black mental health.
Yes. Okay. So when I think of Black mental health, I think of like people who really goes through mental, depression and things that just happen to them that based on childhood trauma and everything. Like, what is your version of Black mental health?
For me, Black mental health, first and foremost, African Americans are 20% more likely to have a mental health condition over any other race, period. But what I find it interesting is only 25% of us compared to 40% of whites actually go and seek treatment. So for me, mental health for the Black community means that it's not just the blues, it's just not emotional ups and downs. We are really struggling internally, but we aren't talking about it. And that's the alarming part, is that we aren't talking about it. So part of my platform and what I want to address is the circular problem. We know that it's there, but everybody refuses to talk about it. So I want to break that silence.
And that's why I definitely brought you on here, because I want to people that really don't know how to handle their Black mental health. There's so many people around in my circle that goes through depression, insecurities, low self-esteem, based on childhood experiences or something that has personally happened to them. So that's why I decided to just bring you on, so we can just talk about the situation and bring hope, bring light to the situation. So like I said, thank you so much for coming on here. So can we go more into detail about the process?
So just like any other illness in your body, your brain can get sick too. So if you are going through any type of ongoing stress, whether that's work stress, relationship stress, any type of stress, that does a toll on your brain. So your brain can then become unhealthy. From there, you begin to have unhealthy thinking and unhealthy moods. And from that, day to day affects your daily functioning, right? So if I'm thinking and feeling this way every day, I can't possibly be having a quality of life. With work, with friends, whether you're in a relationship, it affects your outlook and your worldview on everything. So mental health has to be taken seriously because it's who we are. You know what I mean? It's what we carry every day. It's our thoughts. You know what I mean? It's how we feel about ourselves, how we see the world. So it's something that has to be taken seriously. So with that, the barriers to seeking treatment, for me, first and foremost, it would have to be socioeconomic. It has to be financial. Therapy, counseling is very expensive, even with insurance. So that's a barrier in itself. Because already as an oppressed people, to then ask us to, not only are we low socioeconomic status, but then we are asking for another level of, now I need treatment for counseling, that's another finance. So that's one barrier to seeking treatment, is just overall, it's just the money for us. The next thing that I would say is a barrier to treatment is just the thought, just the stigma of what it means to seek mental health. When we hear of someone going to seek therapy, we are thinking that, oh, something's wrong with them, or oh, something's not right, and we carry this stigma or this understanding of what mental health is, when it's very inaccurate, and it leads us all in uniform to speak in silence. So I feel as though once we start speaking out about seeking help and what it does for us, then it will my hope is that it will turn into a domino effect. It worked for you, it worked for you, it worked for you, it worked for you. And hoping that as a people, we can begin to address this and not continue to fall into the circular problem.
So a call to action. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to us a little bit, what is the process of a call to action?
A call to action for me, so specifically as us, as Black men, I wanted to do a call to action because yes, as a people, African Americans, we need to address our mental health, but specifically Black Americans, Black men, I'm speaking in terms of because I am one, right? And I can speak to that experience. So a path forward for me would be that we begin to look at the personal barriers to seeking treatment. Your personal barrier is different than mine. Mine long ago was, I felt like if I went to counseling, nobody would understand what I was going through. Nobody would understand that I had a single mom, or that I always kept my emotions in and I was afraid to cry. I was afraid to sit in front of someone and trust them with those emotions. So one barrier for me would be to be emotionally vulnerable in front of someone.
So which is very important, because in our Black community, you have so many people who doesn't even know how to deal with their issues. Mm-hmm. Our past generation has, especially my father, he was taught from his grandmother, and the grandfather, not to communicate when there's an issue, to hold it inside and to lash out. Mm-hmm. Back in the 60s, the 70s, I feel like the Black mental health has really, it has always been oppressed, but I think it has gotten worse because we was taught, we was beating back in the days, and we was taught to shut up and not say nothing, or when molestation happens, shut up, don't say anything. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I would say that's definitely generational. Just historically, African Americans, we've always been taught to shove our emotions way down and to appear strong and to appear resilient. And that'll go into what I want to say about Black men and masculinity, is that there is this idea that is projected for us that we have to always be physically strong and mentally strong. And if you're caught crying, you get called such things as sissy or punk or whatever. So it leads you to only want to show emotions when you're with just yourself. You're afraid to display those in front of other people in fear of public criticism or kind of being condemned for showing your emotion, when all the while men are human beings too. But why is it only men, Black men specifically, feel as though that they have to always wear the burden of their emotions and never set themselves free? We're internally struggling on the inside and just in fear of setting ourselves free, afraid of what kind of is the dominant idea about seeking help. You know what I mean? And for me, the internal struggle can affect your day-to-day functioning. Like I mentioned earlier, a mental health condition is your brain being sick. So it affects the way that you think, the way that you feel, your mood, and it causes different types of action. So you imagine someone who is unhealthy, mentally, they're not going to be the best person in a relationship. They're not going to be the best partner. They may not be the best employee at work because they're carrying all this weight, on their shoulders and in their mind. So it is a conversation that needs to be addressed and something that needs to continue to be talked about and not just one time.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What are some ways that we can overcome this? What are some ways that we can get past the stigma? Mm-hmm. What are some ways that we can get past, Black men being labeled as, we're supposed to be these strong people, we're not supposed to cry? Like, what are some ways and what are some steps that we can, open up our mind?
For me, simply just talking about it. Talking plus support. I don't know if you saw my Instagram page, but talking plus support. Simply just talking to someone, whether that be a friend, a church member, your counselor at school, if we're talking about youth, just simply talking to someone. And then another part of that is support. Support can look like I'm listening to you. I'm going to say, okay, you should go see a therapist. Okay, you should go see somebody. But simply opening your mouth and saying, I'm struggling on the inside, and doing something about it. I want people to no longer pretend that the hurt is not there. Stop pretending that it's not tough to get out of bed every morning. You know what I mean? And it's not tough to be in a relationship with someone, but you're consistently kind of beating up on them mentally because you're struggling mentally. And in a relationship, they wear that as well. So
better preach that.
being mentally strong empowers you overall. You know what I mean? So yes, the path forward for me is simply talking about it, talking to someone, seeking some sort of support. As far as resources, I want my African American community to know that there are other alternatives to traditional therapy, which is going through your insurance and it's $150 with your copay. I want them to know that there are things like EAP, that stands for Employee Assistance Program. And at your job, most people, if you are a full-time employee, you are allowed benefits. And with that, your HR department adds what's called Employee Assistance Program, and it allows for 3 free counseling sessions. There's no copay, there's no anything. And it's local, and it's the therapist of your choice. So from there, that's another way to go. And then there's such things as TalkSpace. On TalkSpace, it's a telemedicine. And if people aren't familiar with telemedicine, that is the traditional form of therapy, but it's through either Skype or whatever type of video conference as a way to eliminate the barrier of having to go into the office or have to be in front of your therapist for whatever reason. That resource is available for people, and it's a fraction of the cost for traditional therapy. So
I never knew that.
yes, absolutely. So write that down. That's definitely something to look into. So there are variations, and then just within your local organizations or your local communities, wherever you live, there are tons of sliding fee scale in which if you go in to seek therapy and you can't afford whatever the cost is, they will charge you a sliding fee scale, which may be anywhere from $25 to $50 to allow you for counseling services. So they'll assess where you are financially, and then they will go ahead and provide services to you based on what you can afford. So that's part of eliminating the barrier as far as the financial side, but we must first work on ourselves and figure out what is keeping us from seeking counseling. And that could be anywhere from their cultural things. As far as the Black community, we like to rely on spirituality, and we like to rely on the church community. And while I definitely believe in that, because I grew up in a Baptist church and I grew up in a single parent home, my mom always pushed us to pray and pushed us to go to church, and we were very involved. But in my opinion, I don't believe that's a standalone support. I think pairing that with something else, like counseling, or even if you go to a group every week. Some people don't need one-on-one counseling. Some people can benefit from a group counseling, and that's another way to go. But pairing that spiritual support along with some sort of mental health service, I believe, is our best go-to. But we first have to eliminate and assess our personal barriers to seeking counseling. And like I said, that looks different for everybody. Some people could afford it, but they have preconceived notions about what counseling is and what people are going to think of them. So I'm pushing for people to evaluate what is going on with them mentally and if they need help. Am I struggling getting out of bed every day? Do I have these negative thinking patterns that are keeping me from living my best life, right? And on the flip side of that, another thing as far as our call to action is I want people to begin looking at our coping mechanisms. And what I mean by coping mechanisms is when something negative happens to us, or anything in our life that causes any type of disruption mentally or emotionally, how are we dealing with that? For our community, I'll say a lot of us self-medicate. A lot of us turn to drinking. A lot of us turn into going out or smoking or what have you, or whatever your vice may be. I want people to reevaluate and assess that. Is it unhealthy? Are there other ways that we can cope with what's happening around us as opposed to partaking in something that is unhealthy and negative?
I really like that you said that we have to go in and reevaluate ourselves before we figure out what's even an issue. Like, I feel like you have to dig deep inside to know, okay, why am I acting this way? Like, it was one point in my life where I was going out every day. I was drinking all the time. I felt it was a point where I didn't feel loved and I felt abandoned, and I didn't know how to deal with that as a teenager. I was homeless in high school and in my younger years. So I didn't have anybody to turn to. And I always had that mask on, like, I'm good, I'm okay, I'm very strong, I'm unbothered, and I can just move along with a smile. all the time. Oh, you're so jolly, you're so happy. Little did everybody know that I was in pain and I was hurting inside. So it got, for the past recent years, it got worse and worse because you can only fake it for so long. You can only like have that mask on for so long before it brings like the barriers, the mask is off, and it's to the point where you're becoming this negative energy. You know what I'm saying? So I really like that you said that, because there are some ways that you have to be the one internal to realize, like, hey, listen, this is an issue that I have with myself. Like, this is the reason why I'm acting like that. You know, it could be molestation, it could be abandonment, it could be not feeling love, or just whatever that your person is going through. You have to dig deep inside. And I feel like as us, as an African American community, we are self-taught to hide whatever emotions that we have and just keep on going. Like you said, we self-medicate with drinking, going out, drugs. Man, this one friend, he's always high 24/7. I'm like, bro, you need to come to reevaluate yourself. Like, you know, you're not going to be able to grow if you don't reevaluate yourself. So I really like that you said that. That definitely hit hard.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that, because, you know, to talk about one's trauma or one's past, and, you know, I know how that can kind of bring about feelings sometimes, so thank you for sharing that. But absolutely, I want us to reevaluate our vices, because that is what we are partaking in to deal with what is happening to us, right? So whether that's social or racialized trauma for us as African American men, we are more prone to that. That creates a level of anxiety for all of us. You're a black man, I'm a black man, you know, he's a black man. It creates a level of anxiety for us that we have to carry that around. You know, we are seemingly plotted against. It's like somebody is after us, and to have that feeling creates fear. So that in itself is already a mental health concern. So with that, you know, to partake in the negative vices like drinking or smoking or self-medicating, it creates an escape. It allows an escape from what's going on in reality. When you're drunk or when you're high, you're not in the right state of mind, so you don't have to think about what's going on. So that's always our go-to, because it's quick, it's easy, you buy it on your own, it's whatever, and you're allowed to partake in that, and it creates an escape from what's going on. So that's why people always are participating in those typical vices, because they can escape from what's going on in their real world by drinking every day, by smoking, and then it becomes a pattern. And once it's a pattern, it becomes a learned behavior. Now I don't know any other way to deal with my internal struggle or my feelings besides smoking or drinking or going out every day. Now I've adopted these modalities of coping with my internal struggle, and I don't know how to get out of it. So I'm calling for people to evaluate whatever vices they are participating in to deal with internal struggle, whether it's small, whether it's big, whatever, what have you. Because mental health, again, is not just emotional ups and downs. It's not just the blues. It's not just something you just got to get over. No, Black Americans, we are human beings too with real feelings. And I want us to be more aware and be more attentive to our mental health, because we can't control, there's so much going on in this world. We can't control the external factors. We can't control what they think of us or what they're going to do to us next. We can't control that. So we have to readily prepare ourselves to put in place supports and coping mechanisms that are positive, so that the next thing that happens, because it's inevitable, things are going to happen, life is going to happen, you know, trauma and crises are going to happen, but we have to have the supports and the thought patterns in place to deal with that. If not, everything that happens is going to take something away from us. This is going to chip at us every time. Another Black man that gets gunned down, or you know, any other social trauma that is inflicted upon us is going to take something away from us every time, unless we readily prepare ourselves to deal with what's inevitable, which is going to be the hurt, which is going to be the disappointment. But us as a people, we have to come together and reevaluate our feelings about mental health in its entirety.
So after we have reevaluated ourselves, after we have figured out our, you know, what causes it, and we have sought help, you know, and we have been delivered, we're good. How do we stay consistent because sometimes those thoughts can come back. They will come back to haunt you. And I'm a very spiritual person, and I do believe in Christ. So I do feel like that the devil will try to, you know, the devil is nothing but the trickery of a mind. He will try to come at you in your most vulnerable moment. how do we stay consistent getting over our past trauma after we have received therapy? Because you can only do therapy for so long. I mean, you get it out, you let go, and that's it. But it can always still come back, and it's always in the back of your mind, that subconscious mind. How do we get past that?
Definitely. Well, in therapy, as a practicing therapist, what I do is I'm big on independence and I'm big on client autonomy, which meaning I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to think. Think of therapy as bringing the horse to drink, but not, giving him the water. You bring him all the way to drink. So in counseling, your therapist is going to gear you up with a toolbox. And in that toolbox are going to be different coping skills that you are going to learn how to do. They're going to explore your past. They're going to make you dig deep, deep, deep. And it's going to be really uncomfortable. They're going to dig real deep down to figure out, where is all this hurt coming from? Did it start in childhood? Did it start when you were homeless as a youth, or different things like that? And they're going to gear you up with coping skills and readily prepare you how to deal with that once you're done with therapy. Now, prior to going to therapy, I didn't realize how I was contributing to my own mental health, my declining mental health. The first thing that my therapist told me to evaluate was my thinking, the way that I thought. I'm like, well, how was that helping me? Well, because your thoughts determine your feelings, and your feelings determine your actions. So when I wake up in the morning, what I think about myself or how I feel about the day, I'm carrying that, because these are thoughts I'm telling myself. This isn't someone talking to me. This is a conversation that's happening on the inside. I'm in control of those thoughts. So first and foremost, she taught me how to be in control of my thoughts and to not fall victim to what we call in the counseling world rumination, to where you just sit there and dwell on negative thoughts. And one negative thought goes to another one, then another one, another one. Before you know it, you sat in the middle of the floor all day thinking about negative things and how negative your life was while not living your life. You just lost the whole day. So if you can imagine one person who struggles and does that every day, it begins to feel like just a huge weight. Like it just starts to feel like you're in this world, but you're not of this world. You're not present. You're just going through the motions, right? So my therapist taught me first to be in control of my thoughts, which then control my feelings and actions. So when I woke up in the morning, I wasn't telling myself negative things. I started creating positive statements in the morning. Affirmative statements. Today's gonna be great. I'm good at this. I'm good at my job. I'm a good enough son. I'm a good enough friend. I'm building up stuff within myself so that throughout the day, there's no room for negativity. And if there is, I correct myself. She also taught me how to create negative thoughts, because sometimes they'll just come. But you have to correct those, because if not, it begins the rumination process. So your therapist will gear you up with tools and how to equip you with how to be more emotionally resilient. And over time, like I said, with the independence and autonomy, that person begins to trust their emotional resilience. They begin to feel more strong and empowered and not susceptible to every negative thing that's around them. When you're in a negative thought space, everything around you that happens negative feels like the end of the world. Oh, somebody cut me off in traffic and you're going off, or a friend said something, or something happened at work, or whatever it may be. Everything feels like the last straw. So paying attention to those signs and symptoms is going to draw us closer to the conversation, I believe. But yes, your therapist will gear you up with plenty of tools and equipment to be more emotionally resilient. And after that, you should still be in contact with them. A good therapist, just because you what we call terminated a client once you're done with services, a good therapist stays in contact with their client and checks on how they're doing, and do we need a check-in, or what's happening. And sometimes the check-in doesn't mean come to the office. The check-in is via email. How are you doing? Or they'll give you a call, and because they're working with you for so long, they can kind of scale how you're doing. So a good therapist gives you a toolbox. A good therapist knows how to reach out to you or stay in contact. And then also 3, I want us to share our experiences in counseling. What I am seeing a lot now is I am noticing a lot of people in my network, a lot of Black Americans in my network are going to therapy, but they're keeping it to themselves unless you ask them. I want people to freely share, and everybody doesn't have to, because everybody may not be comfortable, but if you are comfortable, share with a friend, or share with a colleague, or someone that you trust that I'm going to therapy and what it's doing for you. That way we can create a uniformity of wellness, a uniformity of healing as a people. Just start talking about it, and let's make it a thing for Black people to seek treatment or go to counseling or to even see about themselves. No, I don't believe that everybody struggling with emotional ups and downs needs to go to counseling, but I will encourage you to talk to someone. I will encourage you to express that you aren't feeling the best. And if you don't know where to go for help, simply ask a friend or start with your HR department. A lot of people don't know that the EAP services are present. So, yes, I'm ready to help.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, I just feel like people be so nervous just to go to counseling or just to share because you know how us Black people, we want to be seen as like these superheroes. And sometimes even superheroes has their weakest moments.
Right, absolutely.
So I feel like there's sometimes where, you know, us millenniums, even us, especially us millennials, we don't know what to do. Like sometimes we are really like internally struggling and we don't talk about these things and we don't share it. You know, you never know a conversation, how much a small conversation can bless someone. You know, I have to tell myself all the time, like, yes, you go through bullshit, you're going through some stuff mentally right now, but at least be open. It's not, you know, at least be open and honest about it. Right. And let people know, like, hey, this is what's going on with me. Now, you don't got to tell everybody your business, but keep telling a close friend, or just if you feel somebody energy or spiritually, you know, just talk about it. And that is like the best advice that anybody can give. Just talk about the whole situation.
Simply just talk about it. Just open up our mouth and address it. And a lot of us are dealing with things, you know, more in common than in opposition. You know what I mean? Like more of us are dealing with a lot of these mental health concerns than we want to admit. And I believe in standing together and no longer struggling in silence, because that's what I call it. We are struggling in silence. We all know that it's there. We all know that these socialized, racialized experiences are happening in 2019. As a people, as Black Americans, this is something that I believe we have to do, because what is happening in the outside world and those external factors I'm talking about, those are things we can't control. We can't control the political climate and what's happening, you know, with 45 right now and everything. Like we can't control all of it. 45, right? Okay, so I wanted to take a moment to kind of ask you. I know that you have recently been kind of seeking mental health services. So I kind of wanted to ask you, before going in to see your therapist, what were your thoughts about actual therapy? Like kind of what were your preconceived notions prior to going in? Did you have any thoughts or feelings about it?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy Josiah, and I want you to know to be sure to be tuned in next week for Mr. Shealy discussing Black Mental Health Part 2. Make sure you all like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.